Hi, Christine. You're on mute.
Hell yeah. Last night when I started the school committee, I wasn't on mute and I was talking to my family. I'm killing it. I was gonna say hi to John Harney, who's always my first person on here.
Is John on?
John's on.
Oh, hi, John.
Let's get Pete to do. All right. Let me see.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Pete.
Let's see. I'm just trying to figure out who Gus is.
Well, that's a tough question, isn't it, Christine?
Yeah.
Who are any of us, really?
I think we've all spent a little too much time alone. No, Gus is actually calling in, so he's using his phone.
Oh.
So I'm trying to figure out if that's him.
Is he out of power or is he out of sound?
He is traveling.
You want to know what his cell number is?
Yes. Actually, just tell me this. Does it start with 533? I don't want to announce his cell number to everybody.
Yeah. That's not the one that I have.
Okay.
It might be Mark, actually.
It might be Mark.
921.
0535. It might be Mark.
617.
No, this is Mark. Yep, that's Mark.
It's a little early for Gus anyway. It's, it's 6:58.
I just don't know what time zone he's in.
As long as he does. Yeah, I thought I was going to be dialing in as well when the power was out this afternoon, but it came back quickly. So
I had a couple brief interruptions when the microburst happened on Thursday, but that's the only problem I've had.
yeah, our power was out for a while then too. Yeah, it went off today around 4 o'clock. Apparently, must have been something in Millis or somewhere down the road. It's never really rained here.
I was indoors all day on Thursday, and then I drove home around 7:30 at night and was just kind of shocked.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd seen the wind blowing out my window, but I didn't realize that it had blown all the trees down.
Yeah. No, we had just finished baseball practice in Mansfield, and we're driving back for what we thought was going to be a game here in Medfield, and that got canceled, obviously.
Are you the coach?
In Medfield, I help out, although I am missing the game tonight. So I contemplated whether I could participate in this meeting on my cell phone during the game from the field, and I wasn't confident enough in my ability to mute appropriately or in the Verizon service at McCarthy Park. So I'm here and better dressed than I would be if I were calling in by phone from there. Hi, Gus.
Hey, Mike.
Hi,
So I'm
Gus.
the opposite. I thought I was going to be calling in anonymously on a cell phone, but my son has been moved into his apartment here in Chicago, has his internet up and running. I'm logged into his 5G system, and you're probably getting me. Well, it's been a warm day. We've been on the road for 1,000 miles over the last 2 days, but you're getting me with a better video connection than I think I get from my house.
So you're showing us the future then.
Yep. Plus, this is the best backdrop you're going to get. Completely anonymous, nothing, a completely non-moved into apartment.
Yeah. Can you show us what it looks like out the window?
You could be anywhere, Gus.
Sure. I don't know if you can see anything. There we go.
Oh, there's a high rise. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very nice. There's no like lake view or anything here, but it's not bad. It's right across the street from the train station. So good spot. I can show you.
Okay, I think we're ready to go, Pete.
Okay. Welcome to the July 28, 2020 meeting of the Board of Selectmen. We remind everybody every time we meet that we are being recorded. I'm just getting to my agenda here. Excuse me for a second. And we want to, I guess, start by letting everybody know about Ruth DeSorga. And the DeSorgas were a huge presence in Medfield, have been and still are. Eileen's on the board of registrars. Richard, of course, was the Mr. Medfield and the history teacher for political science teacher for eons, and the town historian, as well as being a select board member 30 years apart, his terms. And I guess the funeral is going to be at 11:30 on the 31st. And it sounds like it's going to be digitally available too. We'll start our meeting by taking a moment of appreciation for our troops who are serving around the world, if you'll join me. Thank you. Our first appointment is about the planning board accepting the resignation of Greg Sullivan, who I guess has moved or moving, and to make a joint appointment.
Let me just.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. Let me just get them ready for you.
Joint appointment of Seth Meehan to fill a vacant seat until next town election. Well, that's right. We have to have a joint meeting.
Here they all come, just like that, just like the Brady Bunch. They're all appearing. The planning board has arrived.
How about one more? Okay, I think that's everybody.
Hi, Teresa. Do you have anything that you wanted to start with on this, or?
No, that, well, although we wish Greg the much gratitude for his service and wish him well in his new community. We will miss him on the planning board, but
Big loss to Medfield.
Yeah, he provided some great insights. Well, but our associate member, Seth Meehan, has been right by our stead as well. And Seth is another valuable talent and asset to our community, as serving on the so we accept Greg's resignation so he can move on for his new livelihood and his new community, but offer up Seth Meehan as new.
So you're fading out, Teresa. Your connection seems to be a little unstable. So I think that what we need to do.
I was going to say I can take over for Teresa.
Hi, Sarah.
Hey, everybody.
Oh my goodness, you jumped in there.
Yeah.
Like Oliver North taking over at the White House during the Nixon era.
Sorry, Teresa. Didn't mean to jump the gun. I just wanted to formally make a motion to accept Seth Meehan as a member of the planning board, or to request the appointment of Seth by the selectmen.
Thank you, Sarah, for doing that.
Anyone have a second in the planning board?
I can second. Yep, Paul McKechnie.
So I actually submitted the process guidance that Mark Sorrell had shared. This would have been 5 years ago when Greg took over this vacated term of right. So I think that
the clerk of the planning board calls the clerk of the selectmen calls the roll.
Yeah.
Okay, and because this is a joint appointment and not a special election, right? That's a
Correct.
Correct.
So Sarah, one quick question. The instructions you put in here was that BOS is the one who moves and seconds it. Is that not? Have we
That's
just had a
correct.
motion and a second?
Oh,
Yeah, I
ignore
was.
mine. Yeah.
Okay.
So can we have a selectman move then to appoint Seth
I
Meehan?
will
I'm
move
the
that we,
seconding. I'm the seconding guy, so Mike has to do it.
yeah, will you let me go first here before we start? I mean, yeah. I
This
know
is
you
why
want
we don't
punch me
take
for-
3 weeks off.
So I would move that we appoint Seth Meehan to fill the vacancy on the planning board through the town election in March.
Second,
All right, Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Murby,
yes.
Teresa James,
Yes.
Sarah Lemke,
Yes.
Jim Brand,
Yes.
Paul McKechnie,
Yes.
and Mike Marcucci, yes. Congratulations, Seth.
Congratulations, Seth.
Thanks so much.
Well
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you for stepping forward.
Thanks.
And we do have a vacancy for 2 associate members, which is going on now. We're hoping to get letters of interest by September 1st. And more information is posted on the town's website about that vacancy or those vacancies.
So anybody interested in being an associate member of the planning board, please get in touch with Sarah Raposa, sraposa@medfield.net at the townhouse.
And
Thanks.
actually, can I just put a quick plug in? I think that was everyone on the board except for me, an associate member at one point who was elevated because of a vacancy. So the associate membership is a good path to becoming a full member. So it's and never mind that we really value associate members' opinions and have them vote on everything. It is often the case that people are elevated reasonably quickly.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next,
One other minor administrative thing. Do we also have to formally accept Greg Sullivan's resignation?
Yes, please.
do we need to vote to do that? Are you saying, Chris?
You can vote. I don't think you need to, but
I don't think so, no.
Oh,
if we want to practice for our next one, it might be a good idea.
Well, if we need to, I move that we accept Greg Sullivan's resignation.
second,
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Murby,
yes.
and Mr. Marcucci, yes.
Thank you,
Let
planning
Greg
board
know
members.
he's off the hook, and good luck in Hopkinton.
Absolutely.
Let me promote the police chief.
Chief Michelle Garrett requests Board of Selectmen appoint Terence Tien to the position of police recruit effective on his start date at the police academy and accept withdrawal of Joseph Sherbertes.
So I just want to start by saying that was good fun to watch just now. Thank you. You made my night, perhaps the best Zoom meeting I've been on in a while.
I'm sorry for you then, Chief.
We appreciate your encouragement, Chief. Christine especially appreciates it.
Just awesome.
So unfortunately, Mr. Sherbertes was unable to complete a portion of the testing process for personal reasons. Our options are to bypass him or accept his withdrawal and consideration for the next position. I think he's still an excellent candidate, and the reason for his not being successful at this particular stage is unrelated to his qualifications or his abilities. So I would recommend that we do accept the withdrawal at this time and move on to our next candidate. So that would be the first order of business.
Chief, one question for you on the comment you had on Mr. Sherbertes. It sounds like with your endorsement of his qualifications, you foresee a point in time in the future where the things that had him fall short this time could be corrected and he might again be a viable candidate.
I believe if we have an opening within the next 6 months to a year, he will be very successful at that time.
Okay.
Good. So do we have a motion to that effect then?
Could you just tell us, Chief, a little bit about Mr. Tien?
Absolutely. So in anticipation of one or more of our candidates being unsuccessful in the process, we did interview and background a number of candidates so that we had alternates available. Mr. Tien is a 28-year resident of the town of Medfield. He is a graduate of UMass Boston in communications with a bachelor's degree. He has served with the Norfolk County House of Corrections for the last 2.5 years. I will say this is a testament to his dedication to the department. After learning of Mr. Sherbertes' lack of success in the process, we contacted Mr. Tien and gave him less than 24 hours notice to get to Plymouth and take the remaining physical tests and orientation that are required for the academy. he dropped everything in a moment's notice and got up there and was successful in his first endeavor. So he had remained in shape and prepared to take this appointment if he was fortunate enough to be selected.
Terrific. Well, I would then move that we appoint Terence Tien to the position of police recruit, effective on his start date at the police academy.
Second.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Murby,
Aye.
Mr. Marcucci, aye. And then do we also need a formal acceptance of Mr. Shiverty's withdrawal?
Yes, please.
Okay, and I would move that we accept the withdrawal of Mr. Shiverty's as well.
Second.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Murby,
Yes.
and Marcucci, yes.
Our next appointment is with our new Medfield Youth
Thank you,
Outreach
Chief.
Thank you.
Director. Thanks, Chief.
Hold on.
Kathy
Thanks, Chief.
McDonald, the new Youth Outreach Director, is here to discuss the name change for Medfield Youth Outreach.
I have Chelsea and Kathy here this evening.
Okay, great.
Give Kathy one.
And we're going to find out whether they're going to hold a naming contest or not, huh?
We had Kathy there for a second. All right, hold on one second. We just dropped Kathy off. Oh,
There she
there
is.
we go.
They're both still on mute.
There we go. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, I don't know what happened. Sorry, I dropped out right as you were announcing me. So I was like, that's really bad timing. My apologies. Hi, everybody. I'm here tonight seeking approval from the select board for a name change, just a very slight name change. Hi, Chelsea. From Medfield Youth Outreach to Medfield Outreach. And as we indicated in our name change proposal, we feel that striking youth from our title would better represent the services provided by our department.
Any questions, Mike or Gus? Or
No question about the change. I think Chelsea, you were the one who bore the brunt of the earlier conversations and comments from me. Although Kathy, you and I have had a chance to talk a little bit about some of the concerns I had. Certainly, the direction of the name change I'm in favor of. Because I think the issues the town faces are broader than what the name as it stands now implied. So that was a good one. As you both are aware, I have a continuing concern about the town not making clear the scope of clinical services it offers. Having read what you wrote up here, I don't have a concern about what you classified as short-term clinical services. So in other words, my issue is not whether I think you can provide clinical services from a professional standpoint. My issue is around the scope of services that the town is offering, or that the town is offering to the citizens of Medfield. And the concern there is driven with no criteria of who is or isn't eligible. To me, I'm concerned there is no limit to who is or isn't eligible. And I question whether the town has the ability to pick and choose. So if we should suddenly find more people looking for clinical services that we provide to some town residents and there is no qualifications, then should things change, especially when we broaden the potential target, should things change, all of a sudden the town could be faced with an obligation to one way or the other deliver services to people that maybe we don't have the capacity or we weren't expecting to have to do. And so that's where I'm coming from, is making sure that the town is clear about who does get services. And I'm particularly concerned about long-term services. I'm not, emergency stuff I totally buy into, so that's not the issue. That doesn't affect my view on this particular name change. That issue is still an issue that's on my mind because I'm concerned.
Two questions for you. One is, I would love the opportunity to further discuss that. I don't know what the right venue or how to make that happen, but I fully welcome that. I have a lot of ideas and I'd love to bounce them off you or the group here as a larger whole or the community in looking at how we best sort of answer that question and or grow the program to have the resources to meet the demand. Because as you know, I hope you know that there is great demand for clinical resources and quite a shortage of clinical resources out there in the greater community as a whole. But I won't take up, I know you have a big long agenda tonight, so I won't start there, but I really would welcome that. And I'd love to follow up on that discussion. Regarding the name change, my question to you all would be, is there any sort of, should you approve it this evening, is there any legalese or any sort of things that we need to make sure that we button up or change or look? No, Christine's saying no. Okay. Okay. Because we're long overdue for flyers and business cards and a whole lot of stuff. And so we've been waiting to sort of get this done and print stuff and be able to get it out to the community. So I just wanted to make sure I was dotting my I's and crossing my T's.
Two responses to your last comment. First off, at least as one selectman, at some point in the foreseeable future, I would simply like a clear articulation of what the clinical services are. And I'm talking about sustained clinical services and under what circumstances and what you'd recommend. And I would ask that be presented to the Board of Selectmen for your process to try to get there. I'd be more than happy to talk with you anytime, recognizing there's two other selectmen that may have different views. So I'll speak as one selectman, but I don't want to be overweighting the discussion to the detriment of the opinions of either Mike or Pete.
Is that something that has to happen in an open meeting, or can we schedule this time? Okay. Okay.
You can talk to Gus directly. You can't talk to all of us directly, except at a meeting.
Okay.
So if you and Gus want to have a side discussion, that might make a lot of sense. If you have things that you want to take to the full board, then you have to come to a meeting.
Yeah, but Pete, to be clear, she can talk to each one of us individually directly.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we get in trouble if you do that, and then when you talk to the next one, you tell the next one what the last one said, to where you're effectively running a meeting. So for you can talk to each of us directly. Don't then cross-pollinate the ideas across the three of us.
Okay. All right.
Outside of an open meeting.
I'll be in touch with each of you outside. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions, Mike?
My only question was, do you consider other names as part of the discussion?
Well, yes and no. We didn't have the creativity that I thought we might. So we wanted to stick with something that the community would recognize. And so, but also be, you know, sort of more encompassing of what we serve. We really do serve a lot of, you know, not over 18-year-olds, but under 50-year-olds frequently, especially with our needs-based work and our referral-based work. So we thought one way that we could keep sort of our brand recognition that we have would be to keep the majority of the name, but we would drop the part that sort of makes people think maybe they're not eligible for those services, which is the youth. So it's not very exciting, I know, but that's sort of what our advisory board came up with and felt that would be the most appropriate. And so that's what we put forth to you tonight.
Makes sense to me. I was just curious if there was a fierce discussion about the possible name change.
Nope.
No naming rights at all from any of the businesses in town or anything.
Maybe the logo. We're trying to come up with some sort of, you know, fun logo and stuff. Maybe things will get really exciting there, and I'll have more to report back. But no, it was pretty supportive and tame.
So I have no further questions about the name change.
Do we have a motion then?
I move that we rename Medfield Youth Outreach as Medfield Outreach.
Second.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Murby.
Yes.
And Mr. Marcucci, yes.
Thanks, Kathy, for coming.
Thanks very much.
Both. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Kathy.
Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye, Chelsea. Next on our list is Mr. David Cashman to discuss the Medfield Meadows 2020 sales prices.
Don't see him here yet. I actually never thought we'd be on time, so I told him 7:30. So we may want to take a few other things before.
Sure,
that.
sure. Next item on the agenda is the COVID-19 status update. Do you have anything on that, Chris?
I do. I just want to give you a couple of updates. The Board of Health met last night with Dr. Marsden and Kathy Thompson from the school department to talk about their plans for reopening for the fall. It's probably the largest attended Board of Health meeting we ever had, topping out at 57 people.
Wow.
It's very nice to have that kind of representation. We're also looking at, on the town side, we're looking at a reopening of the library towards the end of August. As you know, right now they're doing curbside collection and passing out of the books, and we'll start to open by floor starting at the end of August. And we'll start with the first floor following the DPH guidelines for libraries. Town hall, as you know, we've had probably 90% of the staff back since May on a rotating schedule. We're rotating to meet the governor's requirement of only 50% capacity in each office. As of Monday, we will have all staff back. There'll still be 2 offices on a rotating schedule, but we'll have all staff back in the building for 37.5 hours. We will do that for 2 weeks, and then we will transition to appointments with the public. And then after that, we will start early voting, and we will open up at the beginning of September to the public. That's the plan as of today. I will caution you, anytime I've made COVID plans more than 24 hours in advance, they've changed, but cautiously optimistic, that's our plan as of today. I also wanted to let you know the Council on Aging has begun some outdoor programs. They're doing some socially distanced exercise classes. They're doing car hop bingo. They're doing some incredibly creative classes to keep our seniors engaged. So kudos to Roberta and her staff for really working under incredible circumstances, having the building still closed. That's my COVID update as of right now.
I was invited to do my selectmen hours for August, the first Friday in August, which I guess looks like it's going to be the 7th, outdoors on the patio. So I guess I'll be doing that there. Did the schools, I didn't go to the Board of Health meeting. Did the schools decide how they're going to open?
No, that'll be done at a school committee meeting.
Okay.
There'll be a presentation over the next few weeks with the school committee.
And how about the voting? We all got those mailed cards, I think. Is the town trying to encourage people to vote by mail?
So that was, we'd like everybody to vote in this election, whether you choose to vote by mail, vote in early voting at the town hall, or in person. It was actually the Commonwealth that has mailed an application to every household to let you know whether or not you would like to have an absentee ballot. So we have actually processed, I think it's close to 600 absentee ballot applications as of today.
Hey, Christine, this particular card though is for the September election, which is the primaries, right?
The primary.
So just to be clear, if people are listening in, this is not the absentee ballot for the November election itself. This is actually for those who want to vote.
When you fill out the card, you actually have the option. You can classify that you'd like an absentee for all of the remaining elections.
Okay, okay, I didn't realize that.
You have a choice for just the primary or the election or all of the above.
So, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Any questions about COVID things? Chris, how about the action items and the vote to call the special town meeting?
Let's talk about that. So my plan was, and as you know, was to have you begin to start the process for special town meeting. And my plan was to have you vote to call the special town meeting as well as the open special town meeting warrants. My plan always with having the special town meeting was knowing that we were going to most likely have to address the budget. We still don't have any state aid numbers from the Commonwealth. And we found out late this afternoon that they've enacted another 3-month budget. And we have been told that we will not have state aid numbers until most likely late this fall, if not early winter. I'm concerned that we would be having a special town meeting, and the plan was to have it in October. I'm concerned that we'd be having a special town meeting in October where a significant article would not be addressed, and that would be the budget. The cost of having our special town meeting outside is a little over $5,000. Given our budget situation, I would recommend that we not have multiple special town meetings. I'm also concerned, October was probably the latest we could have that in regards to lighting and EEE. I think we're going to have to wait to have some more information. I did talk to one member of our delegation who was not positive that we'd be able to have that in October and have those numbers. So I'd like to talk to the rest of the delegation and hold off calling that special town meeting until we have more information.
Okay, so for tonight, we'll just table those items then.
I'd like to table it until we have more information.
Yeah,
Christine,
okay.
Christine, of all the other articles, I understand the proponents of the articles, obviously they would want a town meeting sooner rather than later. From a there's, in the sense that we had our town meeting in June because it was really, really, really important to get a budget in place. I don't believe any of the articles that I've seen, as important as they may be, are so time dependent as, in other words, if we do push out the special town meeting, I mean, when you're saying they may not have anything until late fall, that could be a special town meeting in January or something really weird. There's no other articles that we would consequently not act on before that special town meeting that are emergency in nature.
I don't think there are any emergency in nature. I know the Medfield Energy Committee and Nick have been working very hard on bringing those 2 articles that they have to the special town meeting. We have 2 citizens petition articles that we had said we would carry forward for the special town meeting. And the remainder of the articles are Board of Selectmen articles for transfers of land and solar projects.
Okay.
So while I hate to delay it at all, I am concerned about the timing, and I would like to not see us have to have an additional, a 3rd town meeting this year. I did talk to Jeff today, and there's some concern about delaying the town meeting in that, especially given the parental concerns that we had at the Board of Health meeting last night, that we would not be able to have our town meeting inside the school in, say, in January or February. So we're going to need to find some alternative location for that. So we'll start working on that right away.
And the reason we wouldn't be able to have it in the...
So there's obviously some concern in bringing the kids and the teachers back to the school, and there's some concern about cleaning. We'd be bringing in roughly 300 people if we didn't change the quorum. We would have to coordinate to make sure we'd have enough time to do cleaning. So we were trying to avoid having to bring that many people into a school building while they were trying to do this hybrid project.
All right.
A lot of things to figure out, unfortunately.
And just invest in some patio heaters and have a socially distant, warm around the fire outdoor town meeting, and like hardy Medfielders of yore.
I think we should do it at the state hospital. Put your jacket on.
You have that big brick building in the back.
Probably all fit in the chapel, right?
You're gonna talk to Jean, you're gonna have to lease it from her. David Cashman has arrived for the meeting.
Oh, okay. We'll go back to David Cashman to discuss the Medfield Meadows 2020 sales prices then.
Hi, David.
Oh, hi. How is everyone?
Good.
Hey, David, how are you?
Good, thanks. Good evening. Sorry I'm late. I had a lottery to run.
Greetings. So you're here about pricing at Medfield Meadows.
Yes.
We like the lower numbers better.
I understand that. Just to be clear, we're the Affordable Housing Lottery consultant. So I'm not on the development team. I'm not on the sales team. We just get hired by the development team to coordinate the affirmative fair housing marketing plan and to execute the lottery for affordable applicants. Part of the services we provide is to calculate the maximum affordable sales prices. And really, those are all kind of pursuant to a formula that's baked into the affordable housing guidelines. And there's a spreadsheet that we use. And I think what happened here was that we submitted the initial sales prices prior to April of 2020, which is when HUD releases the area median incomes each year. However, after we'd already submitted plans, and I think it was on April 1st, HUD submitted the new numbers, and those went up. And the relevant household size here, because we're dealing with 3-bedroom units, the formula assumes that the sample household size will consist of 4 people. And in this case, the area median income went up by $7,000 from 2019 to 2020. Similarly, interest rates have gone down. I think when I submitted the plans back in 2019, the interest rates were around 4%, and that's based on the a number published by Freddie Mac. When I resubmitted them in 2020, they had gone down to 3.4. And that actually factors in a cushion of 0.25% above what the 30-year average is. I think that 30-year average has gone down even a little bit since then. I think right now it's hovering around right around 3. So in fact, affordable buyers may be able to get an interest rate that beats that 3.4%. And there's also, you know, PMI factored into the affordable housing price, but in fact, any affordable lender isn't going to have that as part of the loan. So I recognize that the board may sort of prefer the Mr. Murphy, as you said, the 2019 prices, but I don't really have any stake in it. It doesn't impact me, but as part of the services we provide to the development team, we do update sales prices, or if this was a rental development, we'd be updating rental prices to reflect the numbers that HUD has published. I guess the final thing I'd say, and then I'll see if anyone has any comments, is obviously if the area median incomes go up, that also means that households can make, in this case, roughly $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 more and still qualify for the program.
But David, just to be clear, that's true whether we agree to increase the maximum price or not. Is that right?
The income limits are true. Yep. So if you don't agree to the right. Yep.
So as I went through these numbers, there were a few things I realized I needed to be sure I understood. One, what I think I just heard you say is, listen, I'm a consultant to the developers. There's a methodology that we use to determine what the appropriate income levels are. And basically all of these numbers that have changed, I've changed them based on information that the government has provided, done it in accordance with the methodologies that are supposed to be done. And those numbers, because of the changes in both interest rates and the changes in what we've gotten from HUD, these numbers have now look like something different. And so the 2020 numbers are those new numbers. So that's, I think in terms of what you represented there, it's like, I have a job to do. It's do these calculations and here's where the numbers are. So what are your questions? My first question is, when this project was, oh no, let me back up. I have one before this. In these kinds of projects using this kind of methodology, are we having an administrative discussion here that says numbers, pro forma numbers get provided by the developer up front, and then they routinely get updated for the real year? And in essence, this is kind of just an administrative update that you all should just accept? Or is there an actual decision or thought, are there issues we should be considering here with these changed numbers?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think that typically, a special permit or a comprehensive permit would talk about units being affordable to households making up to 80% of the area median income. Mm-hmm. I don't know that they get that specific in terms of sort of what the legal agreement is, whether it's put in writing or just sort of surrounding the negotiations. I'm not part of that process when the deals are getting permitted. So, in fact, I guess if the board were to say, we don't want to approve these, it doesn't feel right, we don't like it, that would be a discussion at that point between the development team and the board in terms of, can you do this? Should you do this? What was sort of contemplated, agreed to? But I would not be part of that discussion at that point.
So that leads me to my second question then. The adjustment to the 2020 numbers increased the sales price of the house by $38,700. So there's a 14% increase in the allowable price of the house based on these calculations. And none of the other numbers, the savings are nowhere near that kind of a percentage. But my understanding is that when a 40B developer puts a proposal together, that proposal in the pro forma structure that's set up is designed, the developer can only make so much profit.
Yep.
So in using the 2019 numbers that were the basis for this development, those were the lower numbers, which and I'm trying to understand if suddenly these units, and recognize that there's 3 out of, I think we're only talking three
Right.
3-bedroom unit sales units. So that's in gross numbers, the numbers at stake. At $38,700 an allowable higher price, given that the project is already underway and the developer has already structured everything, so the costs should largely already be baked in, and the prices, I believe, using the 2019 numbers, were designed to let the developer recover the maximum allowable profit. I'm looking at this 38,700 and saying, so what impact does that have on the development? Do the market rate units go down? Is the town looking at, getting a windfall of almost $120,000 in excess profits that come to the town? Or I think Mike made the comment, just because these numbers are all good in terms of eligibility, doesn't automatically mean the sales price has to go up. So I actually don't understand the implications of these numbers, given that the project was originally structured around the 2019 numbers.
That's a good question. I don't see the pro forma, nor do I see typically development teams would have a financial, like a CPA come in and look at the profits. I don't see that either. What I do know is that it's fairly routine in both for sale developments and in rental developments for the development team to increase prices to reflect the numbers published by HUD. It is also my understanding that the profit limitation is very rarely something that's exceeded. Again, these are kind of third hand, Mr. Murray. I don't do that calculation. That's not part of the services that I provide, but
okay. Then I have a third and final question, and Mike, you can take over. You referred to that oftentimes this also happens with the rental price, the rental units as well.
Yeah.
Are we likely to see the same updated numbers for the rental units? I don't know if you even know that, but.
Well, the rental units, we already ran the lottery. So any household that's in the lottery gets the lottery advertised numbers.
Okay, so that's probably locked in. Okay.
That's locked in. Now, if they don't end up filling all of those units with just lottery households, which often happens, though they had a pretty good turnout for this lottery, if they get approval of the rental prices and then want to market those, then households that weren't in the lottery who subsequently respond, that the 2020 rents is what would be applicable to them.
Good. Mike?
So, Mr. Cashman, thanks very much for coming. I appreciate it. I mean, I think this was sort of the developer's opportunity to have this discussion with the board. And so at least from my perspective, the developer chose you to represent them to have this discussion. And it sounds like we don't have I have no quarrel with your calculations. I'm sure they're correct. I haven't heard anything to change the view that I had the last time we discussed this 3 weeks ago, which is I don't see any reason why we should be automatically adjusting to the maximum amount. There's no requirement in the law that we approve the maximum amount. We negotiated an MOU with the developer at the time that we entered into the LIP process for this project. There's a comprehensive permit. No one has suggested that anything in either of those agreements reflects an agreement by the town to update and approve the maximum sales price for the for sale units. And so my inclination, particularly given the fact that whatever the numbers said as of April 2020, I doubt they're going to be quite as rosy in April 2021. And as between the developer getting the extra $38,000 and whichever families win the lottery and move into these houses and are able to keep that amount and not have to borrow that additional amount to take advantage of our ongoing low interest rates, my preference would be for those families to keep that money. The developer was perfectly willing to do this project at the lower price. I'm glad to hear the lottery on the rental has been successful. I suspect the sale of the nine houses, the market valued houses, will be successful. And so I think I'm where I was before, which is I don't agree with going to the max on this, because it's probably already an outdated number, given what's likely to happen. Certainly if you remove all of the federal money from the income calculation, which at some point that will go away, I suspect those numbers are going to fall, and we're headed into a rougher period. So I'd rather see those three families move into those houses, hang on to that money, and have the lower price on that house.
Hey, Mike, that's where I came out as well, Mike. But I was open to hearing a rationale, but just I didn't understand something about the process. The one point I think is the eligibility. I think we would accept the increase in the eligibility limit in light of the updated
Yeah,
numbers.
I don't think we have a say over that. I think
That's what I
is
think that's true.
That's automatically determined. Is that
Right.
fair, David?
Yep,
Yeah.
correct.
And I think on the rentals, the rentals I look at it a little bit differently, because we had this experience with some of the other affordable developments we did, where the there's more of a market, more market pressure in the rental area, because where developers have tried to charge the max, and you'd be surprised what the max is for a supposedly affordable rental in our town. It's really pretty high, and it's not that big of a gap between the market, quote unquote, market rate rentals and the affordable rentals. But people have a little more flex in terms of not renting them, and so we've had the challenge. I'm glad to hear the lottery was pretty good, because we've had lotteries at other of our rental developments in town where we haven't had enough people even in the lottery to fill all of the open rental slots. And I think over time the developers have had to bring down those rental costs. The calculus is different with respect to the the for sale, and like I think forcing people to borrow that extra money just because the interest rates are low, I don't think that's doing much to try to achieve the goals of the affordable housing programs either. So I'd rather stick with the lower number.
One interesting point on that, Mr. Marcucci, is that the rental program, for whatever reason, has no kind of quote unquote window of affordability. So the rental prices are set right at 30% of 80% AMI, which is why the numbers may be higher than what you sort of think of. And frankly, I see them too, and I think that doesn't sound all that affordable. The sales prices do have a window of affordability, which I don't know that that's going to influence anyone's decision, but just as sort of an FYI, effectively any household in this opportunity, if the board is going to say we're going to keep it at 2019 sales prices, would get the benefit of being able to make 2020 income limits, subtract 10%, because that's how the sales prices are set. They're set at 70%, even though a household can make up to 80%. So it's sort of a relative a monthly output versus a household's income. I think the sales prices are actually lower than what you see on the rental side. Anyway, that's a bit of an aside. I guess the only thing I would just ask, just because I'm sure the development team will ask me, is to see which way you're going. Is there a happy medium somewhere, or is it just 2019 and the board sees no room to move from that?
I mean, from my perspective, this is the second meeting we've devoted to this. I think we've had two opportunities for the developer to make his case as to what they wanted to do. So, I mean, if there was gonna be a negotiation on this front, this is something that probably should have been negotiated up front when we originally put the MOU together and then the comprehensive permit together and the rest of it. I think that's really where these kind of terms should come in, and then everybody should live by them. And so, we put in our asks in those agreements, the developer put in their asks in those agreements, and we kind of are what we are. So this wasn't a piece of it. And so I wouldn't be inclined to have a further discussion about it, just in the interest of time and moving this process along and getting these houses sold, hopefully.
Okay.
I'm in agreement with my colleagues on the way to go on this. So I think that our decision as a group has been to make no change. So I don't know that we need to do anything. So thank you so very much for coming, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Castro.
Thank you,
Appreciate your time.
Okay. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks.
Our next item on our list is DPW Director Maurice Goulet requests Board of Selectmen approve a contract with Environmental Partners Group, Inc., EPG, for engineering consulting services for the final design for the iron and manganese water treatment facility.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Mo.
How
It
you
sounds
doing?
like the days of iron and manganese in Medfield water are numbered. We're coming for the iron and manganese.
We hope so. We hope so. So this contract is for the final design of the water treatment facility. Our preliminary design, we just finished up not too long ago, was submitted by Environmental Partners. And we are in the final design stages now to put this finally to bed, hopefully, and then go to town meeting, hopefully next spring to talk about the construction part of it. So this is engineering partners. It's $489,500 for the final design, and we ask for your support on that.
Questions, Mike?
I assume the Water and Sewer Board has reviewed this?
Yes, they have. This was appropriated a couple years ago, and they were involved in that. So we're just in that stage right now where we're pushing for the final design to be started, and we're hoping to get it done this coming year.
And they've been happy with the Environmental Partners, and you've been happy with Environmental Partners?
Yeah, so far they've been doing a great job for us.
Okay.
We do have a preliminary report on the DPW website that is the product of Environmental Partners Group work to this date.
Gus, questions, Gus?
I don't have any questions on this.
Mo, I've got a,
Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
No, I was going to make the motion to approve, but if you have questions, I'll wait.
I just had one question, Mo, which was whether or not, given the cost of this facility, whether anybody's ever looked at our giving up running a private water system, and whether we should be thinking about what it would be our cost to join the MWRA.
So we did look at it a little bit. For us to run from the MWRA, we would have to run infrastructure all the way from Norwood to here. That's the closest facility that would be able to track the water to Medfield. Just the infrastructure alone to try to get it in here would be costly, as well as we have to abide by their rates, and their rates are supposedly considerably higher than ours right now. I don't have the exact numbers, but we did look at it in the past. But we can research it again if you think that's a viable option. But we just feel that it's really a large undertaking to get it here to Medfield.
I mean, I think to that, just to follow up on Pete's question, I think we got to go ahead with this design at this point. But I think before town meeting, I think we should at least understand what the cost of the proposed, water infrastructure that's on the horizon for the next 15 or 20 years is versus what it would be if we were to go MWRA. I mean, I think there's obviously other advantages to having your own water system and not being subject to MWRA, but I think we should at least understand what that is, because I think this is kind of if we make the decision to build this wastewater treatment plant, we're committing to having our own water system, for the foreseeable future.
And another caveat to that too is with our capital projects that we have for our 20-year capital for water and for sewer. If we join MWRA, we're paying increases in rates that they set for their water system, but it doesn't come to our capital as well. So that's another cost that we have to look at as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I suspect that the answer is going to be we're better off with our own system on a lot of levels. But we should just, I think, know the answer to those questions, to Pete's point, before we go ahead. Because this is sort of one of those decision points where if we're going to make this kind of investment, we're saying we're making a decision that we're going to keep our own system for as long as any of us is going to have anything to say about it. So.
Yep, given the cost, it seems to me that it makes sense to take a look at it.
Yep.
So do we have a motion on this particular contract then?
Yes, I would move that we approve the contract with Environmental Partners as requested.
Second.
Mr. Peterson.
Yep.
Mr. Murby.
Aye.
And Mr. Marcucci, aye.
Thanks, Mo.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mo.
Hey, before you leave, Mo,
Mo's got one more thing. Don't
There's
let
one
it through yet.
Oh, sorry to cut you off.
That's-
Come back.
Okay, so the other one was the census software user agreement that's in front of you, hopefully.
Oh, right. Yep. Sorry.
This user agreement from Census. Census is our manufacturer that of all our water meters across the town. With their software user agreement, if it's approved, it's a communication software between the FlexNet water meter reading software that was approved at Capitol last year that we're looking to implement. That's going to be communicating with our computer system to let us collect and analyze the data coming from the meters. It's an important thing that we're trying to implement, and first we need your approval of this user agreement, the software.
Questions, Mr. Marcucci?
I have no questions. Looks like Gus does, so.
Yeah, Mo, I still have the questions that I had the last time around, and I appreciated that you sent me the updated agreement last week. I didn't get to it until I started getting to it over the weekend, and then I've been on the road here. But before I go, some of the issues I had, if you saw the thing that I faxed to Mark, or that I scanned to Mark, that I have the same issues. But before I go there, let me be sure I understand what this is. First off, is this a contract that we're signing?
This is not a contract. It's just a user agreement to use their software so we can communicate with this new FlexNet system to our system.
Okay, and so what is the obligation that the town, as we do that user agreement, it looks to me like one piece of it is at least some implied level of service reliability that Census is going to kind of commit to as service levels.
Yep.
And I'm not sure what it is we're agreeing to.
We're just agreeing to use their software in a responsible manner, that we don't abuse their software when we're just using it to communicate with the FlexNet system.
So, okay, so maybe we can get there.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, yep. Mr. Sorrell.
So it's basically a licensing agreement that they're very common when it comes to software like this.
Okay, so we're making progress. First, this is not a contract, right, which explains why.
It's a form of contract. It's a type of contract. Anything you sign with an agreement is basically a contract, but from a legal standpoint. But the context here is to use software in connection with hardware. Invariably, you have these floating out there, and frequently, just to add context to it, they're the only game in town. So it becomes basically a contract of adhesion, which means take it or leave it. We were successful in some limited regard here in getting at least Massachusetts law and not being subject to, I think, Alabama or something, which was originally in it. But beyond that, as I said, they're very common. Because it's a software that you're being authorized to use that you can't get anywhere else, they can set the terms and conditions pretty much as they want to.
So that's not making me feel better, Mark, because there's a bunch of stuff in here that bothers me.
It doesn't make me feel better, and I've been dealing with this stuff for 20 years.
So let me, but it's our job not to expose the town to liabilities, whether or not some company has the power to say take it or leave it. And Mo, all of my comments here are recognizing, it seems to me that this service probably will enable us to do some good things for monitoring our water. So I'm not against what this service seems to be offering. What I'm confused by is a company that needs to have a contract this long that basically is completely written in a way that says this company is absolutely not liable for anything. And it almost sounds to me like the town is liable for certain things which we have no control over. And so as I'm dealing with I'm looking at this I'm not a lawyer, but I've got some experience with contract management. I'm bringing common sense into what I'm reading, and I'm reacting to it. So I'm gonna put it bluntly, what's of concern to me. But between Mike, Pete, and Mark, I will defer to the legal insight into all this. I would submit, first off, this is not a contract, but the reason I would submit that it's not a contract is my understanding of the most fundamental elements of a contract is it requires an agreement in which both parties basically do something of benefit to the other party, which is why we have these $1, you know, somebody donates $1 million worth of land, but they get paid $1 for it to make it a contract. In paragraph 1 of this agreement, it says customer is not paying Census directly for the services provided by Census under the agreement. Rather, customer shall pay Census authorized distributor pursuant to a separate agreement between customers. So this is saying the town's not paying Census a thing. And I'm saying, I don't see, in my understanding of a contract, that tells me it's not a contract. It may be an agreement. When I get free software, I don't pay the company anything for the software, but I agree to the terms and conditions of the software. But I'm not signing it. This thing is asking the selectmen to sign this agreement, and I'm trying to understand what our obligations are.
So we do have a reseller. We do have a reseller, EJ Prescott, that is the one that's the representative out here for Census. Yep. They're the ones that sell the Census.
So I would have no trouble signing that contract with them.
We're going to have a contract with them for the FlexNet and for the MXU replacements. So they're selling the product from Census, but Census, being the mother company, is asking for for us to sign a software user agreement.
Well, and I wouldn't mind signing the software user agreement, except there's so many places in here that basically says Census has no liability. Let me give you another example in paragraph 6. Talks about infringement indemnity. Notwithstanding the foregoing, Census shall have no liability under this indemnity unless customer cooperates with and assists Census in such proceedings and gives Census written notice of any claim hereunder within 14 days of receiving it. Further, Census shall have no liability if such claim is related to any change, modification, or alteration made to the FlexNet system by customer or a third party. Use of the FlexNet system in combination with any goods or services not provided by Census hereunder. So basically, we have to use the materials, the products that Census is specifying, which presumably we get from the distributor. Compliance by Census with any design specifications or instructions provided by a customer, or compliance by Census with an industry standard, or any use of the FlexNet system other than for the permitted use. I'm sitting there saying, we'll be hard pressed to make sure that Census doesn't have some legal justification for saying we haven't done something on that big long list of things that we have to do, as well as Census meant for us to do it in this contract that we're signing. So I see that.
That paragraph, Gus, that just applies to a patent or copyright case.
I know.
Right.
So basically, what happens here is I'm trying to understand the indemnification when you have these qualifications. Who if there is some sort of a copyright infringement, and somehow or another we get pulled into it, and we say, oh no, it's you. It seems to me that they have all these different ways of saying, oh, you didn't do these things right, so actually it's on you.
No, it's
well,
actually,
I mean, they're saying if we change the software,
right,
because of our changes to the software as changed, the software infringes the patent of another company. Census is not liable for the customer changing the software in such a way that it infringes upon the patent of another company.
Except
and as long as we tender the case to them within 14 days of receipt, Census indemnifies us for those costs.
So here's the part I don't understand. If that's true, this is software as a service. Census is put in here. It's all of the equipment is ours. We operate this system. We're doing this for you, and we have certain kind of information. I'm sitting there saying, how would we be able to change any software anyway? Because Census basically says they have total control over the equipment and the software. In fact, we
probably can't. No offense to the people running this. We're probably not reprogramming the software. I'm going to guess, Mo, do you have any plans of reprogramming the software, going in there, changing the code, rewriting the code, and doing all? I mean, that to me, I think you're right, Gus, that almost certainly if there is a patent infringement lawsuit, it's not going to be against the town of Medfield. It's going to be against Census because it's going to be the exact same software in every single system that they send. But this is, I think, for customers who may, if a customer customizes the software in some way, that causes a problem for census, census is not going to be liable for that.
So I have
And
no,
like in most indemnification clauses, there is a requirement that you tender the claim to the indemnitor within a certain period of time.
that part, I wouldn't have had the problem with that by itself, but then when this whole turned into a laundry list, I sat there and said, this thing is so long that if census had, as to your point, Mike, you're saying there's some things in here that is probably that with some other customers, census needs this, and census's lawyers have figured out how to put in things that cover anything that could possibly happen. I'm reading things like the export control laws and the anti-corruption laws for software and equipment we don't own. And I'm saying, why is this even in here? Why are they telling us to make sure, you know, Mo, are you planning to bring our water meter monitoring software to Yugoslavia to sell it under the, you know, it's like.
But there are
for that.
Right, but I'm going to tell you, yes, everything
there are
like that.
entities out there doing this kind of stuff, hacking in and messing with software, etc. So this is drafted on a worst case scenario. You know, it's kind of aberrational that you folks have seen this particular contract. I would venture to guess I haven't seen one contract IT related in my tenure in Medfield, although I have in Franklin, and I would venture to guess every single one of them would look virtually identical to this if you saw it. That's just the way they are for all your software operating, whether it's Munis or it's anything that's out there that's basically intellectual or software that's created like this. These are the kind of agreements that are standard in the industry, if you will.
Mark, how many of those, of all those other instances, how confident are you that somebody in any of those towns took the time to read the contract the way I read it?
I have.
Okay.
I have myself on particular ones, and I've tried to fight back, and in some circumstances we've been successful, but what I'm looking at is very limited range of what's acceptable. You mentioned an indemnity agreement. There is no blanket indemnity agreement here. There's one that relates to particular contexts of patent infringement, etc. It's very common to see that indemnity agreement. It's very common to see, as I said, some obscure jurisdiction and jurisdiction's law apply, and we were successful in this case in getting that change. So you can pick here and there, but for the most part, it as I said earlier, it's pretty much take it or leave it when it comes to the substance of it. You want to use our software, these are the terms and conditions.
So Mike and Pete, I'm going to ask you to, and Mo and Mark, I'm going to ask you to humor me for a minute. I'm going to point some things out on this professional, or this not professional agreement, this software agreement that caught my attention. At the end of that time, if I hear from you all that the things that I'm tilting at windmills, I'm pointing out things that while I might be right are just things we shouldn't deal with, I will defer to what you say. Okay, so but I want us to be sure we understand the terms that are in this contract. So at the top, the contract says we're not paying them anything. In section 6B, limitation of liability, census aggregate liability and any all causes of actions shall not exceed the greater of the total amount paid by the customer directly to census. That would be 0 or $10,000. So let's understand that is basically saying the limit of our liability of anything that we do to the town is $10,000. If you then go on to section J, and this one's, maybe we can, given what Mark just said on the other one, basically at the last sentence, furthermore, customer acknowledges census may use subcontractors to perform RF field equipment installation, the systems integration work, if applicable, or project management, if applicable, without requiring customers sent. Earlier on, it said they're not doing that. So we have a clause in here that says they can do things if we have them do it, but it's not applicable. So it's in a I never like.
Where does it say they're not doing that?
Up at the front. when it talks about their scope of services, it says they're not doing the integration work. If there's any integration work, it's their distributors that's doing it. So I have a.
Wouldn't the distributor also be a subcontractor?
Say that again.
Wouldn't they also be a subcontractor, the distributor?
No, in this agreement, there's no subcontractor relationship called out between the distributor and this. And if there was one, we would be paying the subcontract. If anything, I would say it's the other way around, where the distributor is the contractor and Census is a subcontractor for what we're using it for. Because Census is kind of like, we just operate the software and we give you the data. We will tell you to buy the equipment from the distributor, and if you don't, that could be a problem. But we own the equipment. We own the equipment, we own the software, we operate our system. We'll give you the data. And then there's a bunch of liability things here that if we do bad things with the software, which I don't think they'll do, we're not really liable because we've got so many different ways to get out from under the liability.
Right. I mean, so I think on that, Gus, it's just, there are terms in these contracts that are designed to cover a variety of scenarios that may or may not be applicable. And so
right.
The salesman is going to modify the price. They're going to modify the exact services. Those are the parts that they're going to change. And then sort of the backside of the general terms and conditions, they're not always going to change to line up directly, because the reality is if we do any add-on services, they're going to want to refer back to the general agreement and just do a change order or an addition. So it does not trouble me. Now, again, I'm mostly a defense lawyer, so take that with a grain of salt. Pete's more of a plaintiff's lawyer, so he probably thinks this is just some great big scam. But
at the end of all this, as long as you know the things that caught my attention, and you all tell me that, despite the fact you're probably technically right, I don't think we need to worry about it. I'm willing to back down. This one I just found such an offensive contract proposed here. Let's go to section F, data privacy. Next to last sentence, customer acknowledges that it has read and understood Xylem's privacy policy and agrees to the use of personal data outlined therein. Who among us has read the privacy policy and agrees to the use of this personal data? Raise your hand.
There's no personal data involved in water meter reads.
Well, so this is yet another clause that doesn't really have any pertinence to this agreement because there's no personal data. I mean, water usage.
Right, personal data is a legal term of art under both the federal and state laws. So, not that I've seen. And again, you got to put this into the context of what's going on here. This is going to make the water meter reading system work. That's what it does. So it brackets to some degree what the exposures, the liabilities, the damages are. And I take that into account when I evaluate this. By comparison, ironically, the environmental partners contract that you just voted a few minutes ago, I went head to head with them because they wanted to limit their liability to negligence. They wanted to restrict some other things. And I said, no way, you're designing a water treatment plan here. And if you screw up, there's potentially disastrous consequences. I'm not going to recommend to the town that they allow you to have a lesser standard there. So, again, Mark, it depends what it is.
Mark, I will accept your explanation that the personal data that is involved with this contract is not something that I should worry about. I'll accept that. Let me move on to Exhibit A, software. Section C, termination of an application. My reading of this is, so it says, should customer elect to terminate any application, customer acknowledges that A, customer shall pay all applicable fees, including any unpaid software as a service fees due in the current calendar year, plus a 10% early termination fee where such fee is calculated based on annual software as a service, Now, a couple things here. First, if we were to terminate this, it has to be terminated with 120 days of written notice. If we did, even with that 120 days of written notice, terminate it, as I read that sentence I just quoted, we will pay all applicable fees, including any unpaid software as a service fees due in the current calendar year. So that says, even if we terminate it, we're going to pay the fees due that year. Plus, if we terminate it, we're going to pay a 10% penalty on top of that. So effectively, yes, you can terminate it. And if you terminate it, it sounds like to me that you're going to wind up paying the full year's software fee anyway, with a 10% penalty on top of that. Now, is this a multi-year agreement or it's an indefinite agreement?
Multi-year.
So this is
a three-year agreement.
So it's a multi-year. So I guess that says, yes, you can terminate. If you can get the termination through before the end of a year with 120 days notice, you'll pay the balance due for that year plus a 10% termination fee.
And well, let me just add here that this was a fight that I had with them earlier, because Massachusetts, by statute, municipalities in multi-year contracts are essentially only liable for the first year for payment. Second and subsequent years are conditioned upon legislative approval, budgetary approval.
Yeah.
I had asked for that language to be specifically inserted, being an acknowledgement by them that that was the law.
Yeah.
They declined to do so, but that doesn't change the fact that that is the law.
So that means we abide by the law regardless of what we agree to in here anyway? Or it's
in other
debatable?
words, if for some reason the town meeting, from budget constraints, chose not to fund it after the first year, the town wouldn't be liable.
Okay. All right.
Second, in multi-year contracts, it's subject to legislative appropriation in second and subsequent years.
Okay. So here's what I hear. Some of the issues I've raised as a practical matter are not really significant enough for us to just drive a decision. Certain issues like this one that I just raised, even though we might get it in an agreement, the law wouldn't allow us to do what the provisions call for, even though this company declined to agree to it. And the liability, I think I heard back from Mike and Mark, the way that liability works as a practical matter isn't really presenting us with major concerns. And the clauses that really I thought were just stupid, like the export control laws, they probably are in that they're not applicable, but they're not applicable, or they've just been thrown in by the company. Because this company is the only one that's offering this service, and we really want it because it's going to do us a lot of good, we should go ahead and sign the agreement. Is that
I think you're there, Gus.
Okay. If you guys are, I am prepared to join the crowd and say, okay, we're going to roll I won't say we're going to roll the dice. We're going to grit our teeth, accept market leverage, and agree to this agreement so that Mo can finally have the contract he's trying to get.
Yeah, I mean, Mo wants the software. Mark's pushed as hard as he can on making whatever changes are available, and so that this is it.
And the three of us collectively do not see any legal exposure to the town, which is so unacceptably severe or likely that it would cause us to say, I know it's a great thing, but tell them to go pound sand. We're ready to sign it. Christina's nodding yes. No one's nodding no.
Not putting it on the agenda again.
Okay.
How much are we paying per year for this?
I'm sorry?
What are we paying per year for this?
So the annual fees will be $7,500 out of water and $7,500 out of sewer for annual fees.
So it's a $15,000 contract.
Correct.
That would be another reason not to be up there. Okay.
That'll go with the FlexNet system with the distributor.
And is the water and sewer board in favor of this?
They are.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I've covered my points. I'm ready to approve.
Do we have a motion then?
I move that we approve the contract, the agreement, the user agreement with Sensum for software as a service for our water meters.
I second that we approve the user agreement.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Marcucci, aye. You guys, you could have just voted present and it would have had the same. You could have
No.
registered your objection to the software
No.
industry.
If I'm gonna drag everybody through the mud in a meeting like this that long, I'll own it. Yep, I'll own it.
So
well,
Bo,
we'll
can
send
I?
you sometime, Gus, all the shrink wrap license cases from the early days of software,
read
which
'em.
were a great, great conundrum for.
I didn't accept the agreement at the Staybridge Suites last night because of what it said. Forget it.
Did they take away your bed?
Very much.
Yeah, I just didn't download. I just didn't sign into their wireless.
So Mo, before you go, how are we doing on getting all the new meters into the houses in town? Are there any places that we haven't been able to get the new meters
No,
in?
so we're waiting. After the software user agreement approval now, we go into the FlexNet system to get it up on the tank and change all the MXUs out, which is the transmitter from on the meters. So we have to change all the MXUs out now, and that's what we'll be able to read each of the meters that are out there. And go ahead.
Weren't there some houses that were where residents were refusing to let us swap the meters?
It's not that we're refusing. A lot of them, some of them are in really tough places. Some are behind walls. Some of them are in very difficult areas to get. We've whittled it down, but it's still it's less than 100. So we're doing pretty well.
Okay, good.
And how are we doing on our water usage every other week and all that?
So one of the things I'm going to be discussing with the Water and Sewer Board on the 11th is to have more of a severe restriction. We're at a tier 3 right now, which is 1 day per week. We'd like to. We made a kind of to the Water and Sewer Board to go to voting precincts, which would be a lot easier for us to administrate and police. Right now it's Mondays and Thursdays, but when you have half the town do it on one day and half the town do it on the other, it still puts a lot of pressure on our infrastructure. The reason why we're looking to go into a more severe restriction is that we're looking to rehab one of the water towers, which is at Mount Nebo. If we do that, we're still over 2 million gallons pumped in uses in 1 day, which is very difficult on our pumping stations and to our tank. If we only have one tank available when that one's down, the state hospital can't keep up with the demand. So we have to look at a more severe restriction coming up so that we can get that tank rehabbed and then back to normal after that. We're looking at possibly doing handheld hose only for a short term, maybe a month or two, until we get that tank rehabbed. We just lose too much pressure. We don't have the fire prevention that we need out of that one tank with using over 2 million gallons a day.
Well, can you tell if the usage is higher than it typically is during the summer? I can't tell if the usual Medfield summer clear out has happened or not, since everyone's kind of been in their houses anyway.
So this year is a strange year, but we are a lot lower than what we would usually do. When I came here, we were on a typical with no restriction. We're up almost 2.9 million at the highest, which is really incredible. The highest we've been right now is about 2.3 million, which is still incredibly high, but it's mostly on those days that people are allowed to water. So they're going to water a lot in that one day. But most of the days that we've experiencing, it's been below 2 million, which is a great thing for us. But when we have that standpipe, the water tower rehab project coming up, it's going to be very difficult to accommodate even 1.8, 1.9 million. So we're going to we have to kind of nip that in the butt early to make sure our infrastructure doesn't get affected. Mm-hmm. It's not that we're out of water. It's just that it's the infrastructure that we have. If we don't have that second tank, it's very difficult to satisfy all the needs and the demand.
And I mean, in connection with our earlier vote, I mean, when we get wells 3 and 4, more available, that should alleviate some of the issue too, right?
Correct. Yeah. Correct. We'll be able to have more water at that one time to fill those tanks. The issue right now is when we have that demand, the tanks drop. And when the tanks drop, the pumps that are working now cannot keep up with that demand and can't fill those tanks back up. With 3 and 4 online, we can get those tanks up and give the other pumping stations a rest. But we're still limited to 1.51 million gallons average per day. But doesn't mean we can't do 3 million in one day, but as long as we average 1.5 over the course of the year.
Mo, if I listen to your data there, it sounds like on the days that we have watering, there's maybe, I'm just curious how much water people use. It sounds like maybe 200, 300,000 gallons to water their lawns on those days that watering's allowed.
Yeah, it's you know, like I said, we're up to 2.4 million gallons a day on those days sometimes. So we probably average around 1.5, 1.3 in that area. But when they're irrigating their lawns, I mean, people are doing a great job of cutting down their irrigation. But that's where we lose all the water, is in irrigation at this time of year, and it's understandable.
Okay.
Well, I had two things. One, the first is, does the water ban, does that apply to people that are on private wells or not?
No, not we don't regulate private wells.
Okay.
So, but I do caution them when they call and ask, the private wells have to follow this, and I say no, but understand that if everyone else in town is under that restriction, I would suggest that, you know, if do the best you can to conserve water, and if you don't want to follow that because you spent a lot of money putting the well in, please put a sign up that says that you're using well water and that's not regulated by the town.
Okay, thank you. And then the second thing is, we have a comment that's from a resident, John Kraus, that's directed to you. And it's actually to compliment the DPW on their great work clearing roads and setting up detours and road closures after the recent microbursts. And I went out that night on my way home because I was so startled by all the trees down, and I drove around and I saw all your people out and the big equipment from the transfer station there. And you guys obviously were working hard to clean up the town. So I second John's kudos to the DPW for a nice job that night.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. Kraus. We appreciate that. You know, our guys work hard. They did a great job that night with that microburst. It was a confined area, but it was Armageddon for a little while there, and a lot of people were out watching everything going on, and it was sort of like a drive-in movie. Everybody was out there, but we were out and about, and the guys tried to make it safe. As soon as Eversource and their tree crews came in and got everything away from the wires, our guys followed them around town all night long, pulling all the debris from the sides of the road, and then cleaned up all the trees in the area. So we thank you for that vote of confidence. So
good job.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mo.
Take care.
Thanks, Mo.
So Chris, I guess our next thing is Chief William Carrico requests the Board of Selectmen sign new agreements with Beth Israel and Good Samaritan Hospitals.
Yes.
This
So
is for the medicine swap.
Yes, so these agreements were actually signed by the chairman. Obviously, you know that Norwood Hospital had to close during the emergency storm, close on an emergency basis due to the storm. Because of that, we had to find, in about a 24-hour period, 2 other hospitals to provide medicine swaps for us. When we talked about it at the last meeting, you asked me why Brockton was one of them. I talked to the chief. We actually don't transfer anyone to Brockton Hospital. The issue was we couldn't find hospitals to do med exchanges with us that would sign the existing contracts we had. Brockton was an affiliate of Norwood Hospital, so we could transfer the contract over quickly to Brockton. Needham was able to put a contract together that you see in here as well that was signed. And the chief did let me know he's working on an agreement with Metro West, and he should have that within the next month as well.
It was one of those things that I just was totally unaware of. I was fascinated that the hospitals are basically resupplying our ambulance with the medicines that they use during the runs.
Mm-hmm.
And
so I would move that we, oh, sorry, Pete.
Go ahead.
So I was going to move that we approve and ratify the signing of the contracts with Beth Israel and Good Samaritan, is that the other one?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
Medfield Good Samaritan, as signed by the chairman of the board.
Second.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Murby,
Aye.
and Mr. Marcucci, aye.
Our next item on our agenda is Jean Minia requests the board to vote to sign a letter of support for grant.
And Jean is here to talk to you about that.
Hi, everybody.
Jean.
Hi, Jean. Thanks for coming. National Endowment of the Arts, quote, our town, close quote.
You got to cut those flowers back a little bit, Gene.
It's been a great year for hydrangeas, and Jean is stuck in
Oh,
them.
Man, I didn't know you planted those too up at the hospital.
Cape Cod. So it's a grant application to the National Endowment for the Arts. The program is called Our Town, and it just needs a letter of endorsement essentially from the highest elected official. They only accept a maximum of 2 from any town or municipality or county. So that's kind of also a cross check on that.
And you're going to use it to do 4 seasonal events: Porch Fest, Summer Soiree, Pumpkin Harvest Fest, and a winter celebration.
Yep.
Great ideas. Any questions? Mike, Gus?
I have no questions.
So, but I'm glad you're doing it and wholeheartedly endorse it. I did about half an hour before this meeting from Chicago send you an edit, but it was only intended as thoughts about ways to make the letter more compelling. So use your judgment on that. Take it or leave it, or take some of it or leave all of it, or whatever.
Yep, I was fine with your edits, Gus.
I wasn't sure if they still would fit on one page. I think it was supposed to fit.
Has to be only one page.
But anyway, I wholeheartedly endorse this.
Thank you.
All right, so I would move that we authorize Mr. Peterson to sign a letter of support for the grant application on behalf of the Cultural Alliance of Medfield.
Second.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Burby.
Yes.
And Mr. Marcucci.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.
Thanks, Jane.
Thanks, Jane.
Next is the Medfield State Hospital Development Committee is asking us to accept the resignation of Ken Richard and to appoint 4 new members: Patrick Casey, Randall Karg, Michael Meltzer, and Christopher McMahon.
Do you have Todd here today, or?
He is not here this evening.
Okay, then maybe I should speak.
Yeah, I think if you can speak on this, that would be great.
Yeah, at the last meeting, I think you two in particular, because I was coming from the development committee, had delegated the just to make it clear that the decision on who the new board members would be, or the new committee members would be, was delegated to the development committee. So at last week's meeting on Wednesday night, the committee accepted these or chose these 4. It worked out. We had a number of we had a number of people who had volunteered. Patrick and Randy Karg are both come to us from the master planning committee at the state hospital, so their background spoke for itself, and their interest in doing this. In Patrick's case, or Pat's case, his particular background in the modeling, the cost modeling that went into the master plan, was one particularly important piece of corporate knowledge that I think is going to help the development committee. In Randy's case, in his statement of being interested, he cited his work with the Water and Sewer Board, and given that the water and sewer infrastructure issues at the state hospital are important, it made sense that he would be a good choice. Michael Metzler has been involved. He's been actually volunteering here in town already, but he has executive experience, has worked in the nonprofit side, been working with Jean Minio with the Culture and Arts Center. So he's bringing in kind of the not-for-profit real estate development and just executive level experience. And Chris McMahon is a director at Boston Realty Advisors. I've actually informally talked with Chris over a number of years, getting advice from him. and indirectly from one of his colleagues who's been working with some of the Westwood developments. So they were all good choices. The other people that had volunteered, first, we definitely appreciated that they did volunteer. However, they did not have the direct real estate development experience. So these four were the ones that the committee determined were the ones that had the most relevant experience that would be able to probably make the most immediate contribution to the committee. So the votes were unanimous.
Any questions, Mike?
Well, I guess I am curious as to how many other interested, because I didn't see any of the other interested.
There were 3 others. Just because I'm not prepared here to tell you who all 3 of them were. One of them was he's actually a yacht salesman, and if he's listening or friends of his are, I apologize. But his background was in sales, but it was in yacht sales. A second one was Rich Sorrow here in town. I know Rich from Troop 89. He teaches Votech. He actually teaches auto body repair is his background. I informally talked to Rich a couple of weeks ago. We just happened to be talking, and I had given him a heads up that possibly because he doesn't have real estate development experience, he might not make the cut. And the third person was Ann Thompson. And I think in this particular situation, it was definitely appreciated that Ann Thompson volunteered. And she had cited her real estate agent experience, but we were looking for real estate development experience. So that's why she actually didn't formally send in paperwork, but she did volunteer.
So this gives us, if we appoint these 4 individuals, it'll be the 4 of them plus you, Johnny Martinez, and Todd Trevenko. That would be
Correct.
7.
Yeah, so we'll have a 7. We originally were, Ken Richard stepped down, in particular when he heard the discussions at the town meeting, felt that probably it would be appropriate for him to step down as opposed to being a non-voting member. That opened up yet another slot, which is why we wound up with 7. Ken's indicated his happiness, he would be happy to continue to offer advice or help, but rather than doing it as a committee member, it's like he's more than happy to help if there's something that we would like his advice or insight on.
That's helpful. That's helpful, guys.
So Gus, I had some recollection that months ago, Rich Mastronardi expressed an interest in being on the development committee.
Your memory's better than mine, and he didn't submit anything so far as I know. They were collected with Sarah, and Pete, you've mentioned it, and I think you may be right. His paperwork, but to be honest, I forgot.
Sarah has indicated to me that he did not submit a formal request to join the committee.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought was he the one that either you put forward, Pete?
He had sent me an expression of interest. I think probably I think I forwarded along, which is why I was aware of it. He's an executive at a company that did engineering of some sort. I mean, he's a scientist by background.
Okay. I think mentally I had checked off that one of the other ones, the guy who was the yacht salesman whose name I just didn't know him. And I think probably mentally I checked that one off as being the one, but that was, short answer is he didn't submit the paperwork, but had I had a little better memory, I would have looped back to you just to make sure. I apologize for that.
So do we have a motion to make these changes in the
Yes,
committee?
I would move that we accept the resignation of Ken Richard from the State Hospital Development Committee and appoint Patrick Casey, Randall Card, Michael Metzler, and Christopher McMahon to the Medfield State Hospital Development Committee.
Second.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
And Mr. Murphy.
Yes.
And Mr. Marcucci, yes.
Our next item then is the appointments to the Affordable Housing Trust, Newton Thompson and Greg Sanovursky.
So we have 2 vacancies on the board. Adam Amadin and Todd Trevenko stepped down, both sort of founding members of the Board of Trustees. They did excellent work, but Adam's professional obligations will prevent him from continuing to serve. And Todd has his work cut out for him on the State Hospital Development Committee. So we appreciate their time. We had advertised this opening for several months. I'd reached out to some people to see about any other interested candidates. And we have two nominees for two vacancies. And in the charter for the Affordable Housing Trust Board, we're supposed to consider nominees from the warrant committee. We don't have to appoint someone who's nominated by the warrant committee. We did not have someone in this most recent year who had been proposed by the warrant committee, but Newton's a member of the warrant committee, so that will satisfy that recommendation in the charter for the trust. So we have some relatively important things coming up. We have to work on whatever our next development is going to be. I think the trust has an important role to play in any questions about sort of social and economic justice in Medfield. It's got an important role to do that. We have, what will have been our most promising candidate for our next development. The one next to Tilden Village is on hold at the moment, pending work by the Medfield Housing Authority. And it's unclear what will happen with that. So we have that to do. We also have to update our policies and procedures. So we had put in place a 2-year plan for 2018 to 2020. That has to be refreshed and renewed. And 2021 will be our renewal year for our housing production plan. So we'll begin the process probably the beginning of the next calendar year of reviewing the housing production plan, with the idea that we'd be submitting the next 5-year housing production plan as required by the state statute to the planning board and to this board by the fall of 2021. So there's a lot of work to do. And I'm certainly grateful that Newton and Greg have stepped forward to do some of that work.
So Mike, I would just say congratulations to your committee, because it has been so impressive to see that DHCD letter that says that we're at 9.62% of affordable housing units in town. You guys have shepherded a remarkable flourishing of affordable housing in the town of Medfield through the process of the last several years. So thank you and congratulations.
Well, it's obviously a team effort. A lot of people have worked really hard on it, including people who aren't on the board and people who in the community who have continued to attend meetings, continued to come and sometimes oppose the projects, but offer input on all of them. And that's really important, that even for people who aren't on the committee, aren't on the trust board, that they come and they're heard, both pro and con, because we learn things about these projects. We learn things about developers that we wouldn't find out on our own. And so I would encourage people in the community. Housing is a major economic issue in this town and all over the region. And so we'll have a fair amount of work to do. I think this does underscore as well, whatever you want to accomplish, we have something to accomplish. It's important to have an institutionalized approach to doing it. You have a particular board that is responsible for focusing on this. I think it might have been easy after the success of the original iteration of Medfield Meadows to sort of pat ourselves in the back and move on and then lose sight of this. But by having the board, having the funding that we have, we have that institutional force, and Sarah and Courtney at Community Opportunities Group have done a good job helping us in that process. And the other kind of piece of unfinished business that we have is the group home that we're continuing to work on and to try to sort through things. So it's going to be a busy year. The trust board has the summer off, thanks to Chairman Jim Brand. He gave us July and August off, but we'll be back at it in September. So, and if there's no other questions, I would move the appointment of Newton Thompson and Greg Sanovursky to the board of the Affordable Housing Trust.
Second.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Murphy.
Aye.
And Mr. Marcucci, aye.
Next item on our agenda is Zaloose Beer Garden sign request.
So I talked to Jeff. They've had 2 very successful Saturdays at Meeting House Pond. They would like to, however, put up a few sandwich board signs in our normal locations, advertising that they are there on Saturdays. I told him that I would represent him at the meeting. He didn't need to wait for 2 hours for a sign permit. So other than that, he would have been here.
That was very kind of you, Christine.
I know. Sometimes, occasionally.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it's going well. I haven't been able to make it out myself, but it's on my list to do. I'm glad it's going well for them. And I saw that they are starting they're planning to start outdoor dining, outdoor tap rooming.
Yes.
I think next week, right?
I believe next.
That's great.
Any questions, Gus?
My reaction similar to Mike's. I think particularly at a time like, I mean, I think in general, our town should do what we can to help promote business in the town in general. But particularly at a time like this, and particularly for a company like this where Zealous doesn't have their own food permits, so they're kind of dependent upon their tasting room, and the circumstances make it very hard for them to do that. I appreciate both them and Republic coming through to put this thing together. And on top of the fact that I certainly hope it's good for their businesses, the fact that we're also finding something good for people here in town to do, which is healthy, meets all the health standards, and yet still gives people a chance. Leaving aside the current circumstances from a health standpoint, this has been a pretty glorious summer. And the chance for people to come out and enjoy it, I think, has been a great thing. So certainly, if this is something that might help promote that and have them be more successful, I'm all for it.
And I think, Gus, you will get no argument from people when you want to say that drinking beer and eating ribs is the healthy option for anybody on a Saturday, as long as you do it outside. I think that will be you'll get a strong endorsement, and people will be very glad to hear that that is in fact the healthy option.
Yeah, the problem is you're going to see a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing here when we get to the Rocky Woods discussion.
So close, so close.
Anyway, I think it's fine with me.
Right. So I would move that we approve the Zealous Beer Garden sign request.
Second.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
And Mr. Murby.
Yes.
And Mr. Marcucci. Yes.
I would just add that the tables that the town the blue tables that the town's put around the downtown have been very well used. It's really nice to see people sitting on those. So that was a great idea, Christine. Thank you.
The ones out in front of the town hall are full all day long. So it's really
I'm interested that one is so well used. Yeah.
I had a question, Christine. I'm not sure if we're checking, but are all the tables being well used? Are there any that are kind of not?
Sarah and I were just talking about that the other day. Actually, it was Mo. I'm sorry. It was Mo and I that were talking about it. Mo's agreed to move any of the tables that we would like moved. So maybe I'll start walking around a little bit more during the day and figure out what's being used and not used.
So I'm not necessarily trying to move them for the sake of moving them. The one thought I had, and maybe it's just it'll be overcome by time, but I wondered if by any chance we have any tables that are not being used, whether it would make sense to put 1 or 2 tables up at the state hospital. We have a lot of people that go up there, and I'll routinely drive through there, and more often than not, I'll see a group of maybe 3 or 4 people just sitting in the grass, and I'm sitting there. There's all these nice shade trees, and if we had 2 tables that we weren't using, if we had 2 more tables than we have, I would think about putting them up there just for people's enjoyment. So I'm not trying to take anything away from what's helping our downtown businesses, but if we came to a conclusion that we've got them in some places that just don't seem to be getting much of a response, I would suggest trying them out up there under a couple of those shady trees.
I will bring that up. Thank you.
You could also invite some of our local merchants that have food trucks to park up there on weekends, maybe, or something.
Yeah.
Start a Friday, Saturday, Sunday night dinner.
If we do that, the Mutt Wagon's going to have a food truck, but it won't be for the people.
So Gus wants to talk about our next item. Rocky Woods requests approval for a 1-day permits.
All right.
Hike for beer, bonfire and brews on Friday, July 31 from 5:45 to 7:45. Meteor shower campout on Wednesday, August 12 from 5 to 7. Family and friends beaver discovery hike on Saturday, August 15 from 6 to 8. And family and friends subset, maybe it's sunset, hike campout on Saturday, August 22 from 5 to 7.
All right. So here's.
Are you worried
my,
about like heat exhaustion with the bonfire?
No,
at
no, no,
6:30
no,
this
actually,
Friday when it's gonna be 98 degrees?
I didn't have any problem with the bonfire and brews. You know, this is really uncharacteristic of me to, at least I think it is, to be the curmudgeon whenever beer comes up. I want to point something out. So the hike for beer, bonfire and brews is identified as this event is 21 plus. I have no problems with that. The other three, the meteor shower camp out is pushed as a family camp out. The family and friends beaver discovery is pushed as a family event. The family and friends sunset hike camp out is also that. And yet all of them are basically ending up with craft beers, favorite brews. And I hate, well, I don't hate, but I feel like I'm out of my element when I'm a stick in the mud when it comes to drinking beer. But where I'm coming from is, if these are family events, and every one of these family events winds up with, like, you know, s'mores and beer, it just, I'm wondering how much of this is Rocky, you know, the trustees saying, hey, we found a good way to make money and to market craft brews, and we'll put it under the flag of a family event, and we'll get approval from the town. And it gives me pause. We're sitting there, you know, it gives me pause just because what's the message you're sending kids when you're bringing them out into the woods to learn about the great outdoors? And what they learn is, and then after you've gone for that hike, you sit down and you pop some brews around the campfire and tell stories. And if it was less than 3 out of the 4 events that all were advertised as family events with beers, and if we had, you know, 3 family events and one of them had a beer in it, I wouldn't react so much, as it feels to me like the family stuff is just a marketing label for a bunch. And I'm fine if they want to have adult events, go out and walk through the woods and end up with a beer around a campfire. I don't have any problem with that. I'm just asking whether this is exactly the message we want to reinforce with kids.
Mike, anything?
So
you got more kids than I do, Mike. You can speak.
That is true. That is true. And you know, I can sympathize. They might be watching right now, so I'm not gonna say anything. But like, I understand the point, Gus, but I also think that you know, these are being hosted at Rocky Woods, and presumably, you know, every family has a different approach to how they deal with drinking around the kids, and what they think is the responsible way to go about that, and what the kind of behavior that they model to their children. And so, and that's kind of the parents are the primary educators of the children, primarily responsible for their moral upbringing. And so, you know, I don't see anything kind of fundamentally immoral about s'mores and beer, such that that each family, kind of their mileage is going to vary about whether this is something they would bring kids to. You know, frankly, I think that the advertisement of it as family versus 21 plus probably is a warning or an alert to people as to what the overall vibe is going to be. And I certainly, you can have a craft beer and s'mores event and a hiking event with a family that's going to be relatively tame and not really any different than family going out to dinner together and the parents having a glass of wine with dinner or otherwise when they're out at a restaurant, versus, you know, bonfire and brews or what have you. If it's going to be more young people, it might have a little more raucous environment into which parents wouldn't necessarily want to bring their kids. So I get the concern. I get the concern. I've been at times sympathetic to this concern where you've raised it in different contexts. I think, you know, that the fact that it's not on town land, it's not a town sponsored event, and also that it's going to be up to the parents to decide kind of how they're going to go about it, what they think the environment's going to be like. I mean, given the times that it's happening, I doubt that this is going to turn into a, you know, kind of a Corona commercial or a Bud Light commercial or something like that. I mean, I think it's probably going to be, you know, most likely, you know, middle-aged suburban parents having a craft beer with their kids after I mean, it'd be great if it was like a beaver discovery and removal hike, but I guess you probably can't do that. They're just going to discover the beavers and not remove them. So I get the concern, but I think I would kind of put this in the category of leaving it to the judgment of the parents as to the kinds of environment they want to have their kids in and whether this is going to trouble them or not. And that in our regulatory function as the town, I think Rocky Woods has done these kind of events in the past. I don't think we've had any indication of there being any issues or them turning into, massive woodland bacchanals.
No, my issue was neither that the argument wasn't a morality argument. It was really built around what's the examples that you want to set for kids. In other discussions we'll be in the townwide or the surveys that are done of kids, and they talk about alcoholism in Medfield. It's like if the society doesn't send the right messages and reinforce the right things, then we shouldn't get upset when we get the wrong results. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. For what it's worth, as our kids grew up, and I didn't pick up on this, but before a lot of the major proms and things like that, there's always pre-parties, and we got into a discussion after a couple of years about the fact, well, you're telling all these kids not to drink and drive, and then all the parents that show up for the parties are drinking wine and having beer as their kids go off to the prom, which is what's the message that sends? And part of this is not trying to be superior to everybody. I'm actually asking for thoughtfulness, and it's not a moral argument. It's a matter of, is this the thing to be modeling for the kids?
No, I think that is a moral argument you're talking about, and I think it's good. It's not wrong to do that, right? That's an appropriate role for the public authority. I think it's a health issue, but it's also saying, look, this kind of behavior is not to be condoned, and as a community, we want. And I don't say moral as a negative. I think it's a good thing, right? I mean, I just think that and I think you're right that if parents are drinking to excess, and I think if this was going to be events at which we anticipated people drinking to excess with lots of kids around, and I think that's kind of a real concern. I just don't, and I guess that's why the Bonfire and Brews is a 21 plus event, because I think it's intended to be a little jumpier, for lack of a better term. Whereas,
what do you think, Pete?
I have a couple thoughts, Gus. One is that I'm very concerned, as well as you are, about the modeling of the behavior of the adults. And I think that was actually something that was talked about at the MCAP, Medfield Cares About Prevention meeting this past week, that it's important what sort of message the parents in town are sending to the kids. And what we know from the adolescent youth survey that the Metro West people do is that our alcohol use amongst our teenagers is much higher than the surrounding towns and the state. And so I guess I wonder whether or not that comes from whether or not the behavior, the drinking culture is something that's modeled by the parents in town. And I don't think that we want to be encouraging that. But then again, we are a society that allows alcohol. And so that if the trustees want to serve alcohol and they think it's an appropriate thing to do and they can integrate it into their programs, that I guess I'm not the one to judge and say that that's not an appropriate use. I guess what I'm going to suggest is, Gus, that we send you on a fact-finding trip and come back and tell us what it was like.
You realize if I do this, I have to really fully experience the event. I can't just kind of.
Well, you can get a sideline as the craft beer reviewer columnist for the Hometown Weekly as well. You can write up your tasting notes on the.
I would quibble with Mike about one thing, because I think it's probably immoral to mix the tastes of s'mores and beer. I think it's horrible.
That would probably be one way to hold down the consumption of beer. Every beer you have to eat a s'more with it. See how long you last. So I raised it not because I had a firm position, but because there is a piece of this that I think there is a piece of this that maybe not here, maybe not in this instance, but is important for us to stand up as a town in terms of what we want our kids to kind of learn and how we want our kids to look at things. Mike, I think you made some good arguments about this is not town property. For sure, the trustees is a good organization, and what they're doing here is probably helping them out at a time when probably I wouldn't be surprised they need a little bit of help, because I think these are all paid events, so they're using it to raise revenue. What I'll suggest for myself is I've raised the issue, I've raised the concern. Mike, I hear your argument. Pete, I think you understand my argument, but I think you're saying maybe in this instance, this is the wrong, so noted, but maybe this isn't the place to sit there and make a big deal about it.
I'm going to send you the invitation to the next MCAT meeting, so that, because they're seriously concerned, just as you are.
Yeah.
Okay. And look, this is a broader issue as well, but I do think that, and I'd be interested to see on what the data is. I suspect that some of what is reflected in those surveys is something that's actually motivated by a concern over safety, in that parents make a judgment that, well, the kids are going to drink anyway, so it's better that they drink at my house, and better if they drink here under our supervision. There's obviously parents who make the judgment that it's okay for kids to drink underage at their house and have parties and all of that. And I suspect that we probably have a higher percentage of parents in our town making that judgment than other towns. So I don't know how many kids are drinking who are underage, who are doing it completely contrary to their parents' wishes or judgment or otherwise, or as opposed to parents who think they are making the safer choice by facilitating that or the easier choice or what have you. And I'm not commenting one way or the other on what's right or what's wrong in that circumstance. I'm happy to if anyone wants me to, but I think that's probably something here. So I don't think it's necessarily that people are unconcerned about safety, and that's why we end up having whatever issues we have with underage substance consumption that's inappropriate and illegal. Obviously, some of it I think is motivated by a concern over safety. Whether that judgment is correct or not is a different question. That's why I do couch it a little bit as something of a moral question, because that's what it goes to as well. It's not just a judgment about statistically what is the safest approach, one versus the other, because it's what's safe and fine for one kid and one family may not be for others, because everyone's got different vulnerabilities to these things, and that's partially why there are restrictions that apply to everybody. Even if people may chafe under some of them and think that those restrictions are unnecessary for them, they're kind of necessary and helpful for other people. So I think it's a good point to raise, Gus, and I think it's a real concern, but as I think the way this is structured, it would fit within the ability of the parents to manage and model that best for their kids.
All right.
So I think this is a fine thing for the trustees to be doing, but I would circle back to what you were just talking about, Mike, in that when you read the Metro West Adolescent Youth Survey and you see the high percentage of our high school students who are binge drinking in the past month, and then the science that the adolescent brain is not really fully developed until it's in the mid-20s, and that the use of alcohol or other substances during that time is going to change the neural connections in the brain and result in statistically higher substance abuse problems later in life for kids. I think it does become a moral issue for us as a town that we need to help people to not have substance abuse problems later in life by trying to help them do what's better for them from a health standpoint earlier in their lives.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, Pete. I don't.
So given this discussion, I'm okay with this not being the place that we need to drive all of that all the way through. I do think it's an important issue to keep in mind, but maybe this isn't the spot. So I'm okay with it.
All right, so I would move that we approve the one-day permits requested at Rocky Woods for July 31st, August 12th, August 15th, and August 22nd.
Second.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Murby.
Yes.
And Mr. Marcucci, yes.
Our next agenda item is the town administrator update. Chris?
I just have a few things. I just want to call your attention to the lottery we have for the single family home at 4 John Crowder Road. The home is listed at $282,920. It's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, single family. It's actually on the cul-de-sac. The lot is 6,233 square feet. It's a corner lot, and we've received very few applications. And the lottery is August 4th. So Sarah and I will continue our efforts to advertise for it. But if you can, I'll send you the flyer if you can put on your blogs or your own social media to get some attention. You do not have to be a Medfield resident currently to apply for the lottery. So we will send it out to all of our employees as well. But so far, we have not had a huge response to the lottery. And the lottery agent was concerned that there was no interest in the home.
Do we at least have some qualifying applicants so that
we do?
Someone will get it. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We haven't had a 3-bedroom, 2-bath come up in a very long time. I should also point out this was a single owner home. They were one of the original owners, and the home is in very good condition. So we're hoping to get some more interest for it.
Yeah.
The other thing, Nancy Irwin emailed me. I believe she may have emailed you as well. They would like to continue their signage. It came in too late to put on the agenda, but they're doing their curb-wide swap was very successful, and they would like to continue their signage if that's okay with you. I actually honestly thought she had requested it for the whole season, but she'd only requested it for the first few weeks. So if you're okay with it, I'll let her know it can continue.
Yep.
I would move that we approve and authorize the curb swap shop, curb, Medfield curb, whatever it is, the curb thing. The Nancy Irwin curb thing is authorized for the signs.
Thank
Second.
you.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
And Mr. Marcucci, yes. All right.
Great. And then I would just like to echo John Krause's comments earlier, as well as yours. Last Thursday, the microburst, I continue to be amazed by the team we have here in Medfield, both our DPW, our police, and fire. I was in the town hall when it happened, and before I even got to the parking lot, I was on the phone with all three, the chiefs and with DPW, and it's unbelievable how much 2020 continues to test them and how much their response is every time. So just kudos to all of them. Most of them were on scene for a full 24 hours. So I know everybody doesn't get to see that when they go to bed at night, that they're still on the roads. And by the time I got back here on Friday morning, most of the roads were open and everything was cleared. So thank you to all of them for doing that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Christine. I saw it firsthand with the last storm. Right there, a couple of trees down right outside our house, and a lot of activity back there. They really are. They're almost there, lined up, ready to work.
Yes.
If they're waiting for EverSource or somebody else to do their job, so they can get in there. I mean, it really is. They're such a talented group of people. They do so many different things. I mean, it's always amazing to see. They're at the transfer station. They're driving all manner of vehicles. They're doing this, they're doing that. I mean, you kind of see the same people kind of multitasking and having a wide range of skills that really benefit the town. And I don't know how you'd quantify it, the flexibility that they have and the dedication that they have, but they really do an excellent job. And so I'm glad that John mentioned that and appreciate the work that they've done.
We're very lucky. That's all I have this evening.
Okay. Next item on our agenda says next meeting dates. Have you selected one, Chris?
Yes, we are going to meet on August 11th.
Okay.
And we will have further discussions of the special town meeting, and we will also begin our annual appointment process.
Did we send out the surveys?
The surveys are going out. I've been updating them and changing them a little bit. So they haven't officially gone out yet. We're doing a different format this year.
I can imagine why, but I'm glad to hear that. So.
And if there are any residents that want to serve on a town committee, send in your expression of interest, please. Selectmen reports. Mr. Murphy?
I don't think I have anything new to report.
Mr. Marcucci?
So on the collective bargaining front, we've scheduled another collective bargaining session with the fire union. I think it's going to be on Thursday, Christine. I saw the scheduling emails going on.
Thursday at 12:30.
Thursday at 12:30 to hear their proposal, and no update on the police side. Obviously, we approved the police contract that went through the end of June, but that has now expired, and so that'll be up. And then our next meeting for the Dale Street School Building Committee will be on August 12th, the day after our next meeting. And that's all that I have.
And Pete, could I jump back in? There was one thing
Yes,
I should
please.
have covered. As I mentioned before, the development committee met last Wednesday, and one of the things we did was the selection of new committee members. But the other thing we also heard from was a contractor that's from the states. They call it the house doctor list. Mass Development, 2 meetings ago, we had a discussion where it looks like there's a good chance that we'll be able to get a grant from Mass Development to support the RFQ, RFP process. Originally, when we had the earlier discussion, it looked like we might move ahead on our own with the RFQ process on the assumption that it's a relatively simple process, but we were talking to one of the contractors that is on the Mass Development House list as a possible resource to help us do that. What came out in last week's meeting is that the grant cycle has actually been moved forward to where it looks like the grant application process for Mass Development this year would start maybe in late August and play out through September. So given that the grant cycle has moved forward a month or month and a half, rather than just try to do the RFQ process on our own, given where we are in the summer right now, we thought it might make sense to see if we can't go after a complete grant for the support, both for the RFQ process and the RFP process. So at this point, that doesn't change the overall schedule, but I just wanted to point out that we're actually going to try to cover more of this through a development request if we can get it from Mass Development.
There was something that I saw in the past couple of weeks where the town is now gets more points towards grants with Mass Development and green communities. There was some threshold that we did, or I don't remember exactly what it was now, but
Our housing choice community designation.
Is that what it was?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that I think Mass Development was one of the agencies that they talked about.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
That and the green communities were the ones that resonated with me.
Yeah, so we get points. In addition to that, there is a grant program specifically for housing choice communities for up to $250,000 for capital projects that we are now eligible for. And Sarah and I have already been talking about how we're going to leverage those grant funds.
Good, excellent. Thank you, Nick. Anything else, Gus?
That's it.
I had 3 committee meetings. The Townwide Master Planning Committee was scheduled for the night of the microburst and got canceled because of the microburst. Medfield Energy Committee did meet, and there was talk about they've got 2 things that they're looking to bring to the special town meeting. One is to go forward with community choice aggregation, and there's a separate group, Medfield Environmental Action or something, MEA. I don't remember exactly what it stands for, but they're holding a forum about community choice aggregation. And then the other issue is whether or not there should be some sort of town climate goals. The state has set a goal for the state of trying to be, I think, carbon neutral by 2050. And so the question is whether the town of Medfield should have some official goal as well. The Energy Committee is trying to work with the Development Committee to leverage the assistance of Eversource to work with the RFQ and the RFP to make it more energy friendly. And I guess Eversource has people that can help with that writing of the proposals. And I went to the MCAP meeting, Medfield Cares About Protection, and met the new substance abuse coordinator, Mary Haas, and actually had a sit down with her ahead of time. She's looking to meet people in town. And that's where I mentioned, Gus, a lot of your concerns are the same things that they're having concerns with, certainly. So I think that it was very nice to meet Mary. She's obviously very qualified and has a sort of background. I think that's going to really help the town, hopefully. So I'm looking forward to watching what she does for the town.
And Pete, what you said reminded me of, I did attend the forum that the Medfield Environmental Action Group had on the community choice aggregation, the power purchasing agreements. It was very interesting. It was well put together, I thought. It was admirably brief and sort of hit the high points of what we needed to understand. Jeremy Marcet participated and talked a little bit about their experience in Natick, where they actually offer 3 different options for homeowners within the overall community aggregate power purchasing. I don't know if we would have enough users to warrant that. I suspect Natick, between the residential and commercial, have a lot more power usage and are a more attractive customer for the various sellers of these services. But I thought it was interesting. I thought it was it put a little more meat in the bones. We had a brief discussion about this with when Fred Davis was in back in the spring, back when we were still meeting in person. And I believe the forum is available. It was videotaped on the Zoom. It was probably about 45 minutes or so. And so I'm sure it's available somewhere via the Environmental Action Group. So I thought it was well done, and I appreciated that they put it together.
Yeah, I attended that as well and thought that was very well done. And I was fascinated because Penny Connor, who is the vice president at Eversource and just hugely knowledgeable about energy issues, had attended she's on the energy committee, and she had at one point had made the comment that if you go with the community choice aggregation, you may get a lot greener energy, but you may not save money. But it was interesting to hear Jeremy talk about Natick's experience, where they actually did save money on the energy electric usage for the people in town. So that was good to hear from Jeremy about that. And that's all I have. Anything on the informational, Chris, that we should highlight for people?
Nope. I think the biggest thing I really wanted to draw everybody's attention to was the house on John Crowder Road.
Okay. I thought that the certification from DHCD of our safe harbor on our 40B status through May of 2022, is it now? And the fact that we're at 9.62% affordable housing in town was just huge kudos to the town. So that after that scare of the 200 unit 40B, we've really turned things around.
It's been great.
Well, I guess it's time for me to move that we adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Murphy.
Aye.
And Mr. Marcucci, aye. Gus, safe travels back from Chicago.
Thanks. Thanks.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Take care. Good night, everyone.